Good morning, everybody. Did everybody here see Belfast? Okay, good. Spoiler, the kid lives. Second spoiler, he is here with us with a slightly different name. Please welcome Ken Branagh.
Morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you.
And we did not coordinate our outfits. It just worked out this way. I'm going to start with something that is not film related. You can learn a lot about a person based on what movies and TV shows they like, what kind of music they listen to, the books they read. But you can also learn a lot about a person by finding out which Premier League soccer team they follow. And your team is Tottenham.
Yes. Oh, get in. Come on, you Spurs.
Okay.
So we've got an Arsenal supporter in the front row who's in the movie.
We're a Chelsea family, but...
Oh, God. It's already got ugly. It's Sunday morning early and it's got ugly.
But if you know the Spurs, it's where Harry Kane, Gareth Bale have played. But what do the Spurs mean to you, and what do they say? What do Spurs supporters have in common? And there's a very fleeting reference to the team in Belfast. It's on the side of the game box for the soccer game. Yes. It's a blink of an eye. So tell us about the Spurs.
Well, what do Spurs fans have in common? Heartbreak, disappointment. I'm 60 years old, and I became interested in Spurs because just a few years after I was born, I was aware that in 1960, the year of my birth, in fact, the season 60-61, Tottenham Hotspur Football Club were the first team to win the double. They won the league and they won the cup. And they were captained by a man called Danny Blanchflower, and he was from Northern Ireland, from Belfast. And he was a great, great local hero. And he became, as maybe you find with yourselves or with your kids, that something pulls you into that first moment of allegiance and alliance with something. If you're interested in sports, and I know lots of people aren't, so I'm sure we'll get off this in a bit. But for me, our representative in a very prominent position with this, what was I thought very sort of glamorous team, it was exciting to feel that one of our own was doing their thing. Do you know, on a related thing with Jude, the hardest piece of directing that I had to do with young Jude Hill on this film was to persuade him to mention the name Tottenham Hotspur or Danny Blanchflower. He is a Liverpool fan, and I swear to God, it was really, he was almost like, I never saw him, I never had a cross word with him, obviously, but on this issue, he physically couldn't say it, and he would never rehearse it. He would do it in the take, because he has a line about, is there nothing this Spurs legend cannot do? And he has to kick a football, and we only got it out of him like for 2 takes. He said, have you got it?
I took my sons to an Arsenal game. We were sitting in the Arsenal section, and they wore their Chelsea jerseys. And the usher came up and said, if you don't zip up your jackets, you are going to leave here in a body bag. Well, I'm just curious, do you like watching your own work, or do you say, oh, I should have said that differently, or what was I thinking at that moment?
Well, somebody once said to me early doors, they say about films, you never finish a film, you abandon it. So I think that having abandoned a lot of performances and films over the years, leave them be, and be glad you had the opportunity, and don't get too worked up about it. You can always you try and get better every time. Right.
No, I know a studio chief who said we didn't release the movie, it escaped. It's not talking about one of his better films. I want to start by asking you about Belfast, not the movie, but you're leaving Northern Ireland for England because of the Troubles. You're 9 years old. What doors did that move open for you as an actor? In other words, would we be sitting here if you hadn't moved and maybe relocated somewhere else in Ireland or stayed in Belfast?
I really don't know. I know that we'd had our one trip to the theatre, which was sort of in the film, our trip to see A Christmas Carol with a couple of real actors, Joseph Tomilty, who was in occasional films, but a great legendary stage actor in Belfast. There was a thriving theatre scene, but like everything else, it was under threat during the Troubles, and who knows how one might have been able to become involved with it. When it comes to the movies and television, it's hard to imagine back then how you would have got there. I mean, when I watch the film, I'm constantly amazed at how the hell am I sitting here, John, to be honest. So I'm not sure, but it would have been a different route, I think.
There is a Kenneth Branagh archive, which was a gift to the Queen's University from... partially from you, I believe.
Well, yeah, I mean, they very kindly, I don't know if it's a gift, I think I was thrown by your use of the word gift, but various people were interested in sort of gathering some of the things that came along with our work, particularly with Shakespeare, and we've worked with so many talented people, brilliant costume designers and text advisors and all the rest of it. So there's now a bunch of stuff at the Queen's University if you want to go and
I was
study.
scrolling through it last night. I came across a program for a play for your fantastic work in Oh, What a Lovely War at the Meadway School.
Oh my goodness.
Where you were a teenager.
Yeah.
And you kept the program, or somebody kept the program. And my question is, what do you remember about those early years, about being a student, being an actor? Were there certain teachers who saw something in you that maybe you didn't see in yourself? Was there a moment where a light switched on?
There was. I mean, I was at a school assembly. We were dragged out of one class. A teacher was was ill or something, and we were taken into the assembly room. And one of the teachers, the sort of reserve teacher who was there to just look after us, it was really just keep us quiet. Your real teacher's not here. Open your exercise books, do something, and I will be sort of invigilating. And then he started to talk. He said, "Oh, and by the way." We're doing a play called Oh, What a Lovely War. I know most of you won't want to come and most of you aren't interested, but there's an actor in that who could really do this for a living. And I thought, oh, Christ, who's that? I must keep an eye out for who that was. And he said, because he's got real talent and all the rest of it. And then eventually he said my name at the end of it. Well, you could have knocked me over with a feather. I mean, it was a revelation. It never occurred to me in 1 million Earth years. But unfortunately, he set, the seed was planted, and I left there, and because you couldn't go and Google or do anything, I went to that strange place, the library, the public library, and started reading about drama schools.
Explain to those under 20 what that is.
Well, it's a place where you find books. So I found some books about how you could become an actor. I had no idea that there were drama schools. I mean, I was still, I wasn't very far away from having walked around the back of the telly trying to open it to see where all the little people were and where did they live when they weren't doing their westerns. John Wayne must be in the back there somewhere. So the whole world opening up was pretty mind-blowing.
So it's a very short period of time, I think about 7 or so years, from Oh, What a Lovely War to 1984, and you're playing Henry V. So what has transpired in those intervening years? Because it is a very quick succession. Obviously, there's steps forward and steps back. But what is that period like in your memory?
Well, obsession with once I realized what you could do, it became a sort of one single fixed idea to get not to a drama school, but to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. That's where I wanted to go. And so I started in amateur dramatics. I did plays locally in that way with the school. Wasn't a great student as a result. A few things were dropped as I continued this passion. And managed by hook or by crook to get into the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art and landed on my feet. At this point, I may just draw your attention to, we have another graduate at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, Gerard Horan, who's in the front row here, who's also in Belfast. Stand up, Jerry, please. And so Jerry and I were children at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, and while I'm embarrassing them further, Tamar Thomas to his left, please stand up. Tamar is the producer of Belfast. And also another graduate of the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. So it's a mafia. And so that began an obsession with Shakespeare and ultimately an audition for the Royal Shakespeare Company and a season there, 60 weeks at the Royal Shakespeare Company, followed by a year in London.
I have a good friend who is a cellist. He's a very good cellist, and he studied at Juilliard, and at the time, He was in school at Juilliard. There was another very good cellist. You might have heard of him. His name is Yo-Yo Ma.
Oh, yes.
So my friend Steve did not get the best cellist gigs at the school. He went to this other student, but
Whatever happened to him?
Steve he played at Milberg. He is a great cellist. Yo-Yo Ma, I don't know what happened to him. But it's a roundabout way, and what Steve would say is like, yes, I lost some of the gigs, but being around brilliance meant more to me than losing those jobs. And it's a roundabout way of asking you about the Renaissance Theater Company. You and David Parfit launched it in 1987, and you're working with Judi Dench, Derek Jacobi, Geraldine McEwen, a composer named Patrick Doyle, who you end up having a long collaboration with. Being around that group of people and collaborating with them over the years seems like it was life-changing. So I want to ask you about that period and about those alliances and maybe what you learned from those artistic partners.
I learned about a certain kind of creative work ethic. I would say that all of those people were artistic warriors. They loved worrying. They were constantly preoccupied with the thing itself and how you cracked it. It's a funny experience now to think of. It felt to me like 3 days. I expect it was one day of walking up and down, trying to have the courage to ring Judi Dench. I'd been told that she would take the call if I called her, and in the end, writing the script for the call, or at least the. Hello, Judi. It's Ken here. They said I could call you, and I was wondering. I couldn't believe myself, but eventually I did, and she came along. Their seriousness, I think, really struck me. They're all very, very funny people, but their seriousness as artists, why would they get involved with a 26-year-old who was going to present them with a group of other 20-somethings and in what turned out to be high-profile work? And to do so was also to see their artistic adventure, their risk-taking. Well, they didn't need to do any of this, but they wanted to do it for the thing itself. Judi Dench wanted to direct Much Ado About Nothing. She had something to say about it, a plethora of different kinds of experience. And to be directed in Hamlet by Derek Jacobi, who I then went on to direct in the film version with him playing Claudius, with this funny thing. I remember one time we were working in the rehearsal room, and most of the time Derek just wanted to do it. He just wanted to get up and do it. I saw him. He seemed very quizzical. I said, "If there's something you need to say, Derek, please don't be shy." He said, "I think I have a very, very good note, but I'm not sure if I want to give it to you because then I don't have it." And if I play this part again. It'll be difficult. And then I've teased him about it since. We were doing the play at Elsinore Castle in Denmark, where the story is set. And we were doing it in the open air in front of the castle ramparts. It's by the sea. It's a very dramatic and exciting place to be. And we were doing matinees. And Derek comes up to me just before the matinee. He goes, "You all right? Yeah? You feeling tired? Because, if you don't want to do this afternoon, I think I still remember. But anyway, up to you. But if you're feeling tired, you let me know. So I also learned from them this incredible appetite as well. That I knew that. Well, he's going to be. They'll be, carrying him out in harness whenever he hangs up the tights.
What is the timing now for Henry V, the film? And at what point does that become something that not only you feel you want to do, but you're going to try to figure out how to do it?
While playing it, I played it about 150 times with the Royal Shakespeare Company, and then we went off and did, us three all did a first play set in Belfast that I wrote called Public Enemy. First time I put all my money in in a project and lost everything. So that was a good lesson. Don't do it. Anybody here thinking about that? Really don't do it. Nobody came. But we were on the road, and then in the second half of that season, we got lucky with these Shakespeares because we had these great people directing them. And I knew that when I was in the theatrical production of Henry V, I could see film pictures. Just felt as though I could see I could see it in pictures. And when a rather brilliant but maverick ex-stockbroker came along and joined the company as a part financier, he was intrigued. He wanted to get into the film business. And when I I'd pitched, I wouldn't know what a pitch was, but I'd said one night in my cups, I see it like this, and at the end of the battle, Lee carries the boy, and I'd had a bunch of.
Can you translate in my cups for those of us?
When I was inebriated, I was.
Okay, thank you. I want to make. I knew what it meant, but I want to make sure.
I think, in fact, it's a line from Shakespeare, from Falstaff, I believe.
It was often in his cups.
Yes, exactly. He was in his cups more than most, but so it wasn't a good pitch. But Stephen, God love him, was right behind it, and he pulled in every favor he ever could from his previous life, and we somehow managed to get the film financed, and we finished the run of those 3 Shakespeares. So Derek's Hamlet finished on the Saturday night, and on the Monday morning we were shooting Henry V at Shepperton Studios.
When you were talking with this financier, at what point do you say, and by the way, I'm going to direct it?
I think he was enlightened enough to sort of almost wanted that kind of fire, that uniqueness of vision, and he also knew that he needed somebody in the room when he was raising the money who would somehow be able to talk through when they said, and have you directed before? No. But you've probably done a short, yes? No. I said, I directed a lunchtime play for the RSC. Does that count? No, it doesn't. But I had been in a number of TV dramas. I had watched very good people at work, and just the insane, I hope it wasn't arrogance, but the unthinking nature of quoting to them. Well, Orson Welles, once said that if you're making films, you either need to know nothing at all or everything. So I've got one of those.
There's an old joke about attorneys that is any lawyer who represents himself has a fool for a client. Yeah. I'm going to change it to any lawyer who represents herself has a fool for a client, because I'm married to a lawyer, and all the good lawyers I know are women. But there's an analogy, I think, that can apply to a actor directing himself or a director directing himself as an actor, and that is, who wins? Is it the director? Is it the actor? Because I know that other actors who have directed themselves will say they get into the editing room and they haven't shot enough of themselves because they think it's going to look bad. It's like, I need one more. So they undershoot themselves and they don't give themselves enough footage. So when you are directing yourself, how do you make sure that you are getting what you need as a filmmaker and what you're getting as a performer? Because it seems at times potentially conflicting.
I think it's a very interesting question, and the answer's developed over the years. I think I was guilty, or I fell prey to some of what you're talking about earlier in my career, but I don't know that I ever went back to shoot things because I felt I was undershot. I went through the process of being surprised that the take that you might have done that everybody and yourself perhaps thought was the right one at the time turns out not to be. You view half a dozen others and realize that a quite different one with maybe a quite different energy was the best. But later on, to be honest, as a director who acts sometimes, when you are in a well, I'll give you sort of an example of it on Belfast, and I would apply this to myself sometimes, when Kieran was doing some of his scenes with Buddy, Pop to the grandson, in order to have enough time to have absolutely endless time with Jude, the young boy, to try and get the best performance, I would say to Kieran, I think I would rather that you weren't here and didn't do this half of it. I don't want you to spend your performance trying to get the performance out of him, because often we overcompensate with kids. We're trying to almost do the part for them as well. So I don't want you to. So if you don't mind, I'm happy to do that off camera, and Jude's okay with it. And you will have done the 2-shot together. You'll have played the scene. It's not like it'll suddenly become different. And in latter years as a director, sometimes I've said to the other actor, look, we're going to turn around on me, and probably, it's going to take a little while. And I've seen what you're doing. We've been in the 2-shot, and I'd be thrilled if you stay here, but it's going to take a while because I'm going to take as much time as it takes. And if you are happy to go, then I'll happily show you what we did in case you suddenly think I'm going to do it in a very different way that stitches you up. And so sometimes, in order to take that stress away, I've gone, well, I'll do it myself.
there are directors who work well with actors, there are directors who may not work as well. And you've worked with a number of directors. When you think about how their work might have influenced the way you approach directing, do you try to emulate the people that you think have brought out a good performance inside of you and are nice to work with? Or do you try to avoid doing the things that maybe those lesser directors do that you don't want to copy? Because I think they're two different things. Are you trying to mirror what good directors do or avoid what bad directors do?
Well, I think it's inevitably probably a bit of both. Annette Bening was in our film of Death on the Nile, and she's worked with many great directors, and I asked her what are the common features. She said they're organized. She said it's not a very sexy word, but they're organized, and the sets are usually quiet. Doesn't mean that the films are quiet, and I think I've always sort of pursued that idea. The great ones I've watched at work, like Lumet, I met a few times, and he's a great hero of mine, and watched him a little bit at work. Very organized, very precise. It doesn't mean that you neutralize the work, but you're trying to create the right platform. That's what I try to aim.
And sitting Lumet is not behind the video monitors. He's next to camera. He is as close to the actors as he can be. He's not in Video Village. I've been on a Sitting Lumet set. He wants to be as close to the performers as possible because he is with them, not watching them.
Now, answer me this if you remember. Perhaps there wasn't a chance to see it, but he said to me, so we rehearse for 3 weeks, and we try and get everything out of the actors, everything that's going to happen, and then when we go do it, he's very quick, and he'll give you 1 or 2 takes, and then say, no, you had your chance. The 3 weeks wasn't for nothing, so it's to get it ready, and now you're not going to, it isn't now a work in progress. This is you lifting off with what you've practiced, but I need to see it right away.
Yeah, kind of the opposite of David Fincher. I want to ask you about Belfast. And a lot of terrible things have happened during the pandemic. I would say Belfast is one of the great things that came out of the pandemic, because I think it might have taken the pandemic for you to be able to tell this story. Is that fair?
I think it is fair, and that's very kind of you. I appreciate that. Yes, because, like many people, I was... my wife was always very, very sure that this awful thing was likely to happen. She's not a gloom merchant, but she just said, look, you got to look at the signs here from the moment it all started. And I was much more sanguine, a natural optimist, and hoped that all would work out and it wouldn't be as bad as the worst predictions. And then when we were locked down, the sort of the bell tolling of that piece of information had a very sort of profound effect. And of course, like many other people, it stopped everything else that we were doing. So it stopped, and the silence kicked in. And in my case, the sound of this city just came roaring in, and this sense of urgency and importance, and somehow also a feeling that you were possibly going to be writing about something of a very different character, but that was also riddled with pain and difficulty and loss, but through which there must be some way to find hope and a future. And you could argue, as imperfect and as fragile as it is, the sort of political story in Belfast from across my lifetime has been absolutely amazing, through the awful, 3 decades of the Troubles, through to the incredible, flawed but amazing achievement of the Good Friday Agreement and everything that has followed, which, as I say, continues to be very fragile. There's no question about that, and not all problems are solved by any means, but an amazing amount of hope, or at least the potential for hope, has come out of that situation. And I felt I was starting to write something that I thought was sort of congruent with that feeling or that message.
There's a film at the festival by Paolo Sorrentino called Hand of God. Show of hands, how many people have seen it?
I'd love to see this
fantastic. Spoilers, autobiographical, he survives. Because Paolo is here. But there's a moment in the film, and I won't spoil this part, that's very difficult, that involves his parents. And I asked him about directing it, and it was, a tough scene to direct, tough scene to write, tough scene to direct. And I'm wondering, in Belfast, was there a moment in the film that for all of its joy and hopefulness as a filmmaker, to go back and revisit that period in your time, that was difficult for you to be behind the camera, watching it unfold once again?
Well, I think probably at various times quite a lot of it.
Yeah.
But, you know, the mechanics and logistics of making a film are so, on any given day, requiring of your complete attention that you are dragged quickly away from any possibility of sort of being lost to that moment. But yeah, occasionally, you know, and frankly, you know, there was a moment when Judi Dench sort of says goodbye to them, and she has two or three lines that are very beautifully said by her. They're very simple, and she was very patient because we improvised it, and then we suggested various ways in which it might be done. It went on over a period of minutes, and then she came up with what is in the film, these 4 lines with a sort of granite stillness and a big-hearted, profound sort of feeling. And I said, cut. And then I said to Judy, that's it, thank you very much. I'm just going to check at the monitor. So I went to look at it and listen, and then I went, oh, bloody hell, what is that noise? Somebody's messed this up. There's a noise on the soundtrack. The sound, Denise Yardi, the sound supervisor, said, that noise is your thrilled intake of breath, sir, when she did it. Because I'd literally gone, because she was so bloody good, and then messed up my own soundtrack.
Did you literally have to reshoot it, or did you cut?
I was never going to ask her, could you redo that, Judy? Do you mind saying it again? Do the profound one again, the very profound, deep one again. Do that one, because that seemed to work. She'd have punched me in the face, I tell you.
This is a work of fiction, but it's based on truth, your own life story. And several years ago, the director Danny Boyle was adapting Aaron Ralston's book, Between a Rock and a Hard Place, into a movie. He's the hiker who had to cut off his own arm when he was trapped in a cave by a falling rock. And Aaron was on set, and he would say to Danny things like, well, I didn't pull into the parking lot that way, I pulled in that way, or the backpack was over my left shoulder, not my right. And Danny at a certain point said, and I think it's a beautiful line, just because something isn't factual doesn't mean it isn't true.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's a great way of describing an adaptation and creative liberties. So I'm wondering, if you take Danny's idea and apply it to your own film, what were the changes or inventions that you made that you thought made the story more truthful?
Well, I'm going to use that line, by the way. That's ever
Please
so good.
steal it, but credit me.
Yes, I will. No, it'll be 2 credits, you and then by kind permission of Danny Boyle, John Horn. I think there was a sort of openness to a general permission around the way in which movies affected the boy's life, particularly Westerns. And
we see what, Man Who Shot Liberty Valance?
Yes.
Is it My Darling Clementine as well?
No, although it's one we in watching that, I ended up calling our villain Billy Clanton, who is one of the gang that fight at the OK Corral, the Clanton family, you may know, and McClory is also one of that gang, and they fight with, in that case, in My Darling Clementine, Henry Fonda, and is it Victor Mature?
I think it is.
Yeah.
Spoiler.
And but yes, we have High Noon, obviously, right. And we have The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. That world, the world in which he was trying to, and we explored this a bit in this play that we all did back then, Public Enemy, the way in which exposure to storytelling may be an escape or refuge, a way of trying to order the world that is out of control. But if you can see a story that controlled it, especially if it had a good outcome, then maybe you could impose that on your own narrative.
Did you watch Chitty Chitty Bang Bang as a child?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah.
We all did.
Yeah. It's a very good film. So, as you know, I don't know if it was as popular here, but a character from that film huge. That was the child catcher that was really, gosh, that kept us up at night. But the great Robert Helpman, great Australian actor, played the part, and I don't know why it got under our skins, but it did.
When I think about the Troubles, I think about some exceptional accounts of that period of time. There's a brilliant book called Say Nothing, which Patrick Keefe wrote a couple of years ago that I would highly recommend. There's Yann Damage's film 71.
A wonderful film.
Paul Greengrass's movie Bloody Sunday. Steve McQueen's Hunger about...
Ditto to all.
And last but hardly least, the Jez Butterworth play, The Ferryman. I'm wondering...
Starring Gerard Horan, by the way.
There you go. I'm wondering how you might... I mean, this is a story set against the Troubles. It's about a family, but how do you think it fits into kind of the Troubles canon, if such a thing existed, but we're creating it right now?
Well, I'd be the last person, I think, to understand, except that it is another tiny, tiny, tiny little brick in a massive wall that is trying to sort of understand from every kind of perspective views on it. And I think every time you give a different kind of experience, and here, obviously, through the eyes of a 9-year-old, there was no pressure, desire, or ability to encapsulate in any grand way a vast and sort of, in a way, unknowable subject outside the realm of Patrick's book of 400 or 500 pages, which is a gargantuan attempt to do just that. Here, it seemed that the more particular you were, one family, one street, one corner of Belfast, then the audience itself, and this is what I think I'm finding in people's reaction, they're the ones who draw more larger observations or conclusions about the impact, and also largely I think because the film it seems to be opening a portal to other people's experiences of their own childhood, and that is a big thrill. People are often very perceptive. An Iranian filmmaker came up to me the other night in London, having seen the film, and said, "That's our story." I was walking out the door, and a Nigerian man came out the door and said, "That's our story." Wow. And I think if there is in that sense a way in which this film offers a sort of experiential connection via your own childhood, then I think that's something helpful.
So the pandemic not only gave you an opportunity to make this movie, but it also forced a long overdue rethinking in Hollywood about how movies are distributed, whether or not theaters are still part of the future. Christopher Nolan is in your reel. Christopher Nolan was so upset with Warner Brothers, where he is by far the most important director and has made almost all of his films, that he left the studio. His next film is going to be made at Universal because they're not going to release their films day and date on a pay cable platform like Warner's is doing with HBO Max. When you think about the future of exhibition and how movies will be seen, what are your concerns? What are your hopes? I mean, you could argue that streaming now brings a lot of movies to a lot more people. But you could also argue that watching a film like yours on a laptop is not the optimal way to see it.
Well, as you can tell from the film, I'm a movie man. I've always enjoyed the communal experience of going to the films, and I still do, and I do very, very regularly. And last week I went to see the James Bond film, No Time to Die, and I did it in 4XD, so that's the one with the shaky seat, that does all of that when the car is backing up. So
does that make it better?
I felt like I'd driven the Aston Martin by the end of that film.
There's a lot of car in that.
I was also covered in water as well, and often surrounded by smoke. I sometimes, to be honest,
was
John,
Léa Seydoux in the seat next to you?
Sorry?
Was it that real that Léa Seydoux was in the chair next to you in the car? I mean,
well, that would have been a different kind
experience.
of experience. No, my wife was next to me, and that was fine. So I love that, and then I love going to see a film that was a big inspiration to this one, Ida, the Polish film from Paweł Pawłowski. Yep. Oh, isn't that a beautiful, beautiful movie? It's every frame in that film is a work of art, I think, and but I loved going to see that in a packed cinema as well. I enjoy in cinemas the quality of listening when it's quiet, the concentration, which I've enjoyed watching this film play, but also the lively interaction when it's funny. And so all of that, I think, is a rich experience, which is different from the differently satisfying ability to access so many films in our own front rooms. But for the human experience, without sort of being all sort of superior about it, it's just I have found that I've learnt something from watching with other people, because I'm hearing what they're feeling, or I'm feeling what they're feeling, or it's not just the film changing me, it's the audience. And Also, I like the primitive. I like to have ice cream at the films. I like to do that. I like popcorn. I like a bit of diet
At the
soda.
same time, ice cream
All
and
of it.
popcorn?
Well,
Okay.
yes, I do. I
Okay.
do. And I have a primitive ritual where when the ice cream's halfway done, I start to put in a little tub. I then start to put the popcorn in there, and because I want it to last, so I coat the popcorn in the ice cream. So now, by this stage, Leah Seydoux isn't in the movie. It's just Daniel Craig and me and a pot of ice cream.
And are you stirring it with a red vine?
I'm stirring, yes, absolutely, because of course by now it's quite melted, and then often you've got the popcorn here, and then you've got a cup holder. Don't always have cup holders in UK cinemas. It's quite a routine. You may feel this impairs my concentration on the film. It does not. Obviously, I'm eating less ice cream for Ida than I'm eating for the James Bond film.
I think this could catch on in the States. No, it won't. We've talked a lot about you. I want to hear a story about your father. I'm going to ask your longtime collaborator, Jerry Horn, to come up and tell a story. Oh, come on, Jerry.
Hey. Thank you. And can I just say, on behalf of myself and Tamar, thank you so much for having us. This has been a lovely experience. And but John was asking if we had any funny stories about Ken. Well, yeah. I probably can't repeat many of them.
Oh, go ahead.
But to tying in with the movie, which I'm assuming now most of you have seen, I was honoured to know Ken's mum and dad and his family, his greater family, for a great many years. And he'll blush when I tell you this, but when he was, by this stage, when we were doing the play Public Enemy, which Ken wrote, they've mentioned earlier. And by the way, I don't think Ken gets enough love for the writing. I think the screenplay for this movie is terrific. And, these things don't just get thrown together. There's a process there. But Ken had written this play, and myself and Tamar were involved, and at this stage in his career, he was a superstar at RADA. He won't think so, but we could tell this chap's going somewhere. And on the opening night, there was a little party, and Ken and his mum and dad were there, and his mum and dad, that was the first time I met them, in fact. And at this point, Ken has done an enormous triumph at the RSC playing Henry V. He's been in a trilogy of plays on the BBC, a huge, huge hit called the Billy Plays. He's just written and performed this piece, and Ken's father, the sweetest, most adorable man, who I love very much and we all still miss, he sidled up to me at the party and he just said, do you think our Kenneth, do you think he has a future in this business? And that, to me, it's so Belfast, but it's so, we share very similar backgrounds. I'm not from Belfast, my family are Irish, and working class family, and I just said, Bill, he's going to be okay. For the next year or so at least. But that seemed to me to encapsulate something that's very at the heart of this movie. There's a concern with people wanting to know that their loved ones are going to be okay in an uncertain world, and my family equally had no notion of what show business or acting or what everything was. But as did Ken's, fully threw their weight behind my endeavours to try and make a life for myself in this business. So that's my little story about that beautiful family.
I have one last question, and that is, actors and directors certainly take away something from pretty much every project they're involved in. Not as an actor, not as a director, not as a screenwriter. What did you personally take away from making Belfast, and how might it change your outlook on projects and stories that you want to tell going forward?
I think that I'm still, it's an evolving thing. It's been a rich experience, and in the same way that the beginning of the process at this time of uncertainty that we were all sharing didn't really let me know whether it was going to happen. It was always going to be a step-by-step thing. I was thrilled to finish the screenplay. I was happy that my brother and my sister liked it. I was thrilled step-by-step that somehow we managed to get it on and managed to succeed. So everything has been a sort of step of wonder, including, frankly, being at the Middleburg Film Festival, where you just... If you'd, one thing that is ongoing, John, is I look at that film and I think, how did I end up here from there? I've come to Middleburg. I'm in the middle of the great state of Virginia, and and people are interested. I see all your smiling, beautiful faces, and people have been kind enough to support this film and support the many other films there. And I think that this atmosphere right now, and this festival and this time in all of our lives for very different reasons is a tender time. Mm-hmm. It's a tender time. Our nerve endings have been exposed. I don't know whether they're fully recovered yet, or whatever we've talked about it for a long time now, whatever the new normal will be. But inside that time, tender acts of kindness, and I would regard your attendance at our film to be one of those. Thank you very much. I think there's a sense, has it changed? I think it's changed the one's capacity, one's interest, and one's profound gratitude for such acts of kindness, for the possibility of taking another step forward, looking at this beautiful landscape, seeing the sunshine and thinking, thank God we're alive, and we're please God for all of you and all of us healthy, and that's pretty good.
Amen. I'm going to bring up the person who makes everything possible here outside of Sheila, Susan Koch. And Sheila, who's going to present our... Sheila, come on up.
Well, Kenneth, first of all, I can't believe you're here. Thank you for accepting this visit with us. This film festival I started 9 years ago, and never in my wildest imagination that I would think, not only that you're here, and we've had so many incredible celebrities and guests and extraordinary films. This is like a dream come true. And you are quite a storyteller. You are amazing. And I just really want to present you with this Spotlight Director Award for our 2021 Middleburg Film Festival. You are a present to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can I give you a hug? Thank you very much.